we offer the window package, insulation package, a roof package, and that kind of thing. So we're able to leave a house weather.
Dave the Builder on KFM with Premier Timber Frame Homes, your expert guide to self-built homes. PremierTimberFrameHomes.ie.
Yeah, indeed. If you want to get your questions into us now, 0833 97 97 97. Dave McManus of Premier Timber Frame Homes is with us again in studio. Hard to believe it's week 6 of our building slot already. The weeks are just flying by. And Dave, last week we were talking about getting windows and doors put into a new build home. Now we're actually talking about the erection of the actual timber frames. I suppose for a lot of people, when they're building their own house and they see the frames going up, this is then when it becomes a reality and the house starts to take shape.
Yeah, absolutely, Owen. So, and because we have everything pre-manufactured, it goes up quite quick, and people that are not familiar with it would be amazed at, as I say, when you look into your field, you have very little there, and all of a sudden we come onto site, and within, a couple of days, we've the shape of a house up. So it is quite exciting in that sense, But just to take you through it a little bit, I suppose, on when we land to site, and I've touched on this before, some of the problems that we encounter is the entrance isn't wide enough. You know what I mean? So it's important that people get their entrance that little. Sometimes you're only missing a few feet either side, but it makes a huge difference to us. And we had an instance lately where we couldn't get a crane up, and if you can't get the crane up, you have big problems, and the cost will lie with the customer, so that's very important.
So when you're coming in then with the timber frames, is it kind of like when you see these big trucks driving along mobile homes on their back, that you have the frame ready to go and then you just plop it on top of the foundations, or are you building it on the foundation? So
it's actually what we consider it to be kind of like flat packed, just for a word that people understand. It's all the wall panels are nearly like, we'll call it big Lego. They're 8 or 9 foot high by maybe 3 metres wide or 3.6 wide. They're all lying flat on the back of the lorry, and you'll have your roof trusses in the shape of an A, and then we'll come onto site, we'll rig up our crane, and we'll lift each panel in one by one. So it'll be like big squares or big rectangles with the window doors openings in the panels, and to be lifted in section by section. We've done numbered very simply, let's say 1 to 20, 1 goes in and 2 and so on the whole way around.
Right. You mentioned that it only takes a couple of days to do this, which might surprise some people. It's not a very lengthy process to actually put the frame up.
Yeah, so the frame should go up in less than a week, and you should have the shape of, if it's only a bungalow house, should have the shape up within 2 or 3 days really. So your crane is only there for a couple of days, so that is very impressive in that sense. But I'll tell you, we kind of go the extra mile. We offer the window package, insulation package, a roof package, and that kind of thing. So we're able to leave a house weather tight.
Yeah, well, that was the other thing I was going to say, that if you get the timber frame put up then and it's lashing rain in, for a week or two before anything else goes on top of it, can the timber get damaged while it's out and exposed to the elements before anything else gets put in on top of it? No,
it definitely can't get damaged. Now, I suppose people do worry quite a lot about that, but I suppose timber is naturally moist anyway. And okay, it is great to keep timber dry, but let's face it, we live in Ireland, and that's not always possible. So there is a bit of, if it's up for 3 or 4 weeks, and I have seen them up quite longer, and there's still no harm done to the timber frame.
Okay, I'm just looking, messages are starting to come into us now this morning. Dave Kelly from Ballymore Eustace says herself and her husband have bought a house that was built in the 80s. They're renovating it now, and they were told that it would be recommended to get it airtight. How is it, what is, first of all, getting something airtight, and how is it possible to do that, particularly on an older home?
So we get all our timber frame houses airtight. So we use an airtight membrane the whole way around the external wall and the roof. So when you walk in the front door, you'll see when we walk out, you'll see a kind of a foil the whole way around, and that's stuck with a really sticky air tightness tape. So that will leave your house airtight. So the reason people get houses airtight is to stop the drafts. So most of your heat loss goes out through drafts in windows and doors and beside the windows and up through your ceiling and so on. So when she's getting a renovate, or she's going to renovate a house from the 1980s, there is ways of doing it. She would probably want to put the air tightness membrane on the ceiling at least, and then get a good few rolls of the air tightness tape. She'll have the air tightness tape around each window individually and each door individually that's on the external walls, and there is other products. Sometimes when you're dealing with old structures like that, you might have to use air tightness paint in certain areas, or, as I say, there is different ways of doing it. Sometimes spray foam can also achieve air tightness, so maybe it's just having a chat with her architect and he might be able to kind of direct her, but they are some of the ways that she can use.
Okay, Tim, speaking of architects, Tim from over the border in Laois says our architect has put a 5-metre bifolder door into our architectural designs, but our builder recommends not to use it. What other options do we have? Why would a builder recommend not to use that?
So I have seen in the past bifolder doors. They were very popular around the noughties, especially when people were building on an extension. And it is a great idea because you can open up, let's say, your 4 or 5 metre bifolder door, and if you're having a bit of a party or a get together, you're nearly bringing the outdoors and the indoors together, and it's very good in that sense. Now, we've seen if they're in use, or a good bit of use, even a few times during the summer, sometimes they can start to get a little bit leaky. When I say leaky, the air can draft in underneath them. So what they're using today instead of bifolder doors is lift and slide doors. So you've probably seen them on the likes of Grand Design or in with Dermot Bannon there. So the bifolder door, or the lift and slide door, it's an aluminium door. You're able to lift it. It runs on a track on the bottom. You're able to open it and close it with your baby finger, and it's just a better door. Okay, that's from Tim in Laois. Sharon in Newtown says, we're building a house this year and we have a flat roof on the new build. What's the best material to use to waterproof a flat roof? I guess, when you have a so-called typical roof, the water will run off it. If it's a flat roof, is it liable to just lie on top? Well, I suppose when we say a flat roof, it would be nearly flat. I always like to get 3 degrees minimum, so you can get that water off. But when the carpenter or the roofer is creating that flat roof, he'd want to put in ferring pieces, and it'll just create a little uplift on one side of the flat roof, and the water is directed towards a gully. Now, once that structure is in place, there are a couple of different options. So quite common now is the fiberglass, which you can put on top of an OSB board or a plywood. There's also Trocol, and there's Lava 20, and they're just 3 of the main types that's used at the moment. But the one thing I will say when it comes to flat roofs is you need to get the ventilation right, because if you get the ventilation wrong on a flat roof, disaster. Yeah, Mary has texted in actually to say that her roof at home is flat. She says it's nothing to do with the building of it, but it can just be a bit of a nightmare with moss on top of it and like birds dropping bread when they're flying over on top of it. So it might be hard to keep clean in some instances. Yeah, look, it is, and especially when you go back to some of the older flat roofs that was done, let's say in the 90s and stuff, you definitely get that type of stuff. With the newer stuff that's, let's say, been built today, we'd like to think that a lot of that stuff, because the water is moving all the time, it shouldn't create that much moss, if you know what I mean. We were talking yesterday about solar panels in houses, and we were speaking with Professor Peter Monaghan from Technological University in Dublin, and Sean in Leixlip has texted in to say, can you put solar panels on a timber frame house or not? Yes, absolutely. You can put solar panels on a timber frame house, and it would be recommended to do so, especially what we'll be touching on now next week is solar panels and your heating system and how they work so well together. But the answer is definitely yes. Is there a risk of a fire is kind of what a lot of people are worried about, maybe say acid or anything like that might be running out of batteries or stuff like that? Well, look at first of all, you can get the solar panel system without the batteries, and a lot of houses in Ireland would actually have them without the batteries. So when the solar panels are creating energy throughout the day, you can actually be putting energy back onto the grid, and the ESB will pay you for that. So, but if you are set up, the batteries do cost quite a few quid, and some people build their house and get the batteries a few years later. But I definitely would talk to your engineer about putting them in a certain place. I've seen people putting them in an outside shed and even on a blockhouse, just because there is always that little bit of risk of batteries overheating, and it's usually down to human error. People not watching the monitors on the batteries and stuff like that, you know.
Another message in here actually came in to say, I was listening to Dave last week talking about windows and doors. He mentioned aluclad doors. Would he recommend these? We have an old wooden door out the back. We're looking at getting it redone. What's the best one for the Irish climate?
I suppose timber being exposed on the Irish climate isn't great. So probably the PVC, the aluclad or the aluminium would be, because the aluclad is a timber window or a timber door with aluminium on the outside to protect it.
Okay, Hannah has just passed in a phone call that she got as well from Mick, who's another listener. He has a terraced timber frame house, and in the attic between the two houses there's no block work. He thinks there should be a block wall dividing the two houses all the way up to the roof, and is asking, is that a new legal requirement? So while we're talking about timber frame homes maybe being built out in the country, they can be built in terraces and estates. So essentially what we have here is a house next door to a house, but there's no blocks in between the two houses. Probably for privacy and sound is what Mick is looking for that to be done for.
Yeah, I'd imagine that Mick's house could have been built in a time where the building regulation mightn't have been up to the standard that it is at the moment. But the best of my knowledge, yes, Mick would be right. If you were building a house, them two houses today, you would need a block wall, or what they call a party wall, up between the two of them. And not only is it for privacy, but it's also for prevention of fire. So if a fire broke out in one house, it would stop the fire going towards the other house, you know.
Can you put it in retrospectively? Could Mick now look at getting the block wall put in, or is it too late? Should that have been done when it was being built?
Look, in hindsight, it probably should have been done when it was being built. Yes, there is measures that he could take now, and I would definitely talk to somebody in the timber frame industry about it. So if he wants to give us a call directly, we might be able to, you know, if he's local, we might be able to pop out and have a look and advise him.
Okay, and Sean from Blessington says, can you ask Dave what's the best roof for a 15 degree roof width? You might need to just send that message in to me again, Sean. I'm not entirely sure what that means, so if you just want to send that in to me again, that'd be great. Another one that we have, though, came in as well, Dave, from Ashling in Castledermot, wanting to know, do you take on apprentices? So maybe looking for a job here. I don't know if it's Ashling herself, or maybe somebody that she knows is looking for a job.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, we're Solace registered, which Solace is the updated FOSS, I suppose. So we're Solace registered, and we do have apprentices employed. Do you know? And look, at all I would say to her is, you know, we do expect a minimum from apprentices, like, you know, be on time, you know. They should know how to clean up after themselves as a minimum, and be able to use a floor brush, do you know, and we'll teach them the safety aspect and stuff like that. But you'd be very surprised. We have people coming in over the last 8 or 10 years, or I've had worked with apprentices for 20 years or more, but lads are coming in and they don't know how to sweep a floor. You know, that's something that their mother or father should be showing them as a minimum, and cleaning up after themselves, you know.
Yeah, so you're not overly strict, though, are you? Or would you be? Would you be a straight... You run a tight ship?
Look, run a tight ship. There's certain things that I would be lax on, and it depends on the time and the day. Like, if we have a crane on site, I need everyone on site on time, and I'd be very strict that day. But like, let's say if we were working in the workshop and someone had a genuine excuse, that's no problem. But look, like someone that's going to be late 3 mornings of the week, You know what I mean? There's no excuses for being late 3 mornings of the week, every week.
All right, absolutely. Listen, we'll leave it there, and if anybody wants to get in touch with you again, Dave, even if they want to get an apprenticeship or whatever, what's the best way to do that?
Look, at the email address is info@premiertimberframehomes.ie, and the email address is the same. And then we're most active on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, which would be Premier Timber Frame Homes, and Dave at Premier Timber Frame Homes.
Good stuff. Talk to you again at the same time next week, next Thursday, just after 10 o'clock. Cheers, Dave.
Dave the Builder on KFM with Premier Timber Frame Homes.